Hey everybody, Chris Newhan here, and I wanted to talk about AI art from a slightly different perspective than mostly what I'm seeing in comments and all of that stuff on the internet. Um, First off, I don't think there's no stopping AI art. And I'll talk about this more later, but we don't want to create some entity that has the ability to define what AI art is. Um, for me personally, for my own work, I'm just not interested. I I I'm not making the art that I'm making for the sake of only the final product. For me, the writing, coming up with all the ideas, all of that stuff and the designs and all that, that's why I'm doing it. So it's about that journey for me as an artist. But from a practical matter, I'm not opposed to it. Um, I, as an individual artist, if you're creating stuff using Midjourney or whatever, and it's 90% or whatever percent of what you're creating, um, I'm not going to consider that art. I may look at an image and like it, but it's not really art in the sense that an artist took the time to figure out all this stuff and put it together. To take a stand against AI art in general is the same as taking a stand against any march of technology. It's impossible. There's no way we're stopping this. But what we have to figure out as artists on an individual level is where do we draw the line? And it's basically where do we draw the line of how much we let the computer solve for us? Because there's a lot of little labor saving things that we do that you may not think of as AI art or anything like that, but it is approaching it. Like I recently, in my short film Cabin in the North Woods, I used a cloth solver for modeling. I had a bed that I wanted to make look made, but not with a lot of care. So I made a blanket and I used the cloth solver to drop that blanket on the bed. It took about three, four, I don't know, five times before it landed in such a way that I liked the way the wrinkles looked. Should I have modeled that? Uh, just gone through the process and modeled it, sculpted it, whatever else to make it look, because otherwise letting the computer solve something for me is cheating. In this particular case, the what's back there is in the set is not important enough to me to spend a lot of time modeling it. But it was using the computer as a labor saving device. And so is global illumination. My first job doing any kind of real lighting for a project was on Mist 3 Exile. And at the time, if I wanted bounce light, I had to place a light. If I wanted light bouncing off the floor and putting a little bit of light underneath things, I had to place a physical light there and uh, match the color to what I thought would be bouncing back up. Global illumination has eliminated that need. So is that cheating? Because undoubtedly, on a project, if I wanted to preserve jobs, so to speak, I would go back to lighting individual lights. There's a story that's attributed to Milton Friedman, the economist, where he visited some country and he saw some road work being done, and the people were using pickaxes and shovels, and there was a bunch of people doing this, and he asked, "Why aren't you using something like a backhoe or modern equipment to do this?" And the response was, "Well, this isn't just a roadwork project; it's a jobs program. Meaning, there's a lot of people here that are working because we're doing it this way." And his response was, "Well, why not use spoons? Because then you'd have to employ a lot of people or employ the same people for a really long time." So we have to find where that dividing line is. And I think there's a lot of things that we all decide that we're okay with, from self-publishing. Say I can make a PDF and have it printed out in a book from Amazon or wherever in a matter of weeks. And is that taking jobs away from literary agents, publishers, editors, editors, assistants, all that stuff. In a sense, it is, but is that something that a lot of people are complaining about? Um, or do we like the fact that we've taken one of the gatekeepers be, from between you and your audience? And I think we almost all would agree that that version of life is better, that we can reach our audience. There's a million examples like that. From a perspective of someone who's made hundreds of hours of, I think we can look at AI in a similar fashion to outsourcing. It didn't take jobs away. I mean, there were certain positions that went away, but it changed the nature of what a particular the but it changed the job a particular set of skills would get you. So, like, I was an animation supervisor at Nickelodeon, and I had effectively a team of 20 something animators working under me in India. The reality is that without outsourcing, that TV show would not have existed. There's not enough advertising dollars or now subscription dollars to pay for that. And I know everyone's thinking, oh, these companies have billions of dollars and they should be able to pay for this. But it doesn't work like that. Like, you look at a company like Walmart, and they'll have a huge total of what their profit was that year. But if you divide that profit amongst all the employees that they have, you're talking like pennies per employee. And do the math, you'll see. And it's like that for TV too. As a result of outsourcing, you look at the sheer amount of animation that there is out now. There's more than anyone could watch or would want to watch. And there's a whole nother debate about whether it continues to be of any quality or not. But the reality is, without outsourcing, all of the jobs that the massive glut of jobs that we've had over the last few years at Disney, at DreamWorks, at Nickelodeon, all that stuff would not exist without outsourcing. And I think AI can be thought of in similar terms. It's not going to replace the job, it's going to change the nature of the job. And I think in a lot of cases, AI will actually make it so more content, more specialized content can reach the audience. Let's imagine for a second that there's an amazing comic book. Like, you read it and it was just, the story was unlike anything you ever read. It was touching, it was exciting, whatever makes you love a comic book. It had all of that. And now let's imagine that the creator of that, he had a great story, but he had no network of friends who were artists who would help him out. He had no money to hire anybody, even at like Fiverr rates or whatever. He didn't have any of that. But what he did have is Midjourney, and he was able to create this comic book. And absent Midjourney and AI, the story would not exist. Is the world better for having that story that was so beautiful, that was so touching to everybody? Is it better that AI helped that person get that story on the page for you to read, or should it be shut down? I don't think we want to have any entity or individual to have the power to define what art is. And that, especially, a lot of people are wanting the government to make some rule that defines what is really art. And I promise you, you do not want that. The government will not be on your side. There's nothing that they're going to do that's going to be beneficial to the individual artist. They may make it seem like that. They may name the bill in a way that makes it sound very attractive. But I guarantee you that Netflix, Nickelodeon, Disney, they're going to have a seat at the table in defining what those rules are, but you're not. And you can be sure that the rules will be in their favor. Look what Disney has done to copyright law. Their entire catalog that they built up was built on public domain properties, and they have since shut down that idea for anything. So you don't want to invite the government to have any say in it. The only governments in that have had the ability to define what art is are totalitarian governments. And not that we're getting close to that, but you don't even want a sliver of that because every little step towards that is easier for the next step, and you don't want it. So, the last thing I'll say on this subject is gathering reference. Any artist, including the ones who are adamantly anti AI, if they're going to start an art project, the first thing they're going to do is jump on Google and start looking at images. They might photo bash things together, depending upon the nature of the project, where that makes sense. They might draw combinations of different things that they're seeing in all this reference. They may do textures, which they grab from images on Google and all that. And I suspect that many, many people who are very anti AI art are doing that without giving any credit to the photographer that they're referencing. And in effect, Midjourney is a very rapid version of that process. And true, it's taking out some of the human touch, but it still takes a human to look at that and go, yes, I like what this created. And again, for my personal work, I'm not interested. But from someone who has helped produce a lot of shows, I can see why companies will do that. I would rather they didn't, but it's just the reality. I know people that have gone in as art directors on projects, and they're presented with something that was generated by Midjourney and said, this is what we're going for. And that artist has to make a decision of whether it's okay for them to continue on that project knowing that. But reality is the next project they go on is they may go and to be an art director or director on this project. And they're going to present you with, say, Steven Silver drawings or Robert Valley drawings or whoever and say, we want to do this. Your choice is effectively the same. Someone else is making the decision about what the art style is without the art director. And this happens to composers all the time for TV and whatever. You get the temp track in there and some producer says, we really like this temp track, let's do that. Well, they can't just rip it off, so they'll basically do what amounts to a remix of some existing material. All of that happens at all times in TV. I mean, how many episodes of TV have you watched where you're like, oh, I know the movie they got this idea from, or I know the other TV show. I know like every show I've worked on has had episodes that are inspired. The first writing credit I ever got was on Penguins of Madagascar. And I made an episode where they go into chameleon cage and it's a ripoff of Predator. I mean, hopefully I changed it enough. It's clearly inspired by that. That was where all the ideas came from. That's just the reality of who we are. Sometimes we do that stuff without even realizing that we're borrowing from other things. I think everyone that has a very anti-AI stance, it's completely understandable. And I think some of the fears are real, some of them aren't. Especially if you're younger, you don't have maybe the necessary experience to see how a field that you're in changes over time. So it can look scary. We all have to do some soul searching about what we're okay with. If enough people turn down jobs because there's AI art being requested from them, then maybe the producers do take a stand and say, hey, we're not going to use this. We can't get anybody. I know like there's been enough of a pushback like that. LinkedIn went from people sharing Midjourney stuff every day to where I got irritated. I'm like, I don't really care. You didn't make this. But now there's none. Nobody posts AI art on there anymore because everyone got so mad. And I think we're far better off self-policing. You know, you can make some sort of personal group of people, just of people who are saying no to AI. But giving that group any power, I think, would be extremely dangerous for anybody because they could just decide they don't like somebody, determine that their artwork is no longer artwork. And we don't want that from any direction. But it is something that we all have to come to grips with. Anyway, that's all I got. Comment below. Let's have a conversation about it.